63 elite candidates stood waiting in the lobby of Nexara Tower, each one certain the job belonged to them. Then a single father walked in. Wrinkled shirt, tired eyes, a small girl clutching a stuffed rabbit at his side. The laughter started before he reached the desk. The sneers were not even hidden. But seconds later, that same man dropped a heavyweight MMA champion to the floor in absolute silence. No explanation, no celebration, just the raw, undeniable truth standing in the middle of the room. So tell me, what exactly did everyone in that lobby fail to see in him? The lobby of Nexara Tower was built to intimidate. 40-foot ceilings of pale stone, glass that reflected nothing but cold light. The kind of space where every footstep announced itself and every man inside had learned to walk like he belonged. 63 of them stood in loose formation that morning, waiting for the elevator that would take them up to the 14th floor. Former Rangers, ex-Secret Service, 2 men who had run private details for senators, 1 who had spent 4 years on a diplomatic protection team in Eastern Europe. They wore tailored jackets that hid the shape of their shoulders and watches that cost more than most people made in a month. They knew without being told that this was the most coveted private security contract on the East Coast. The CEO of Nexara had received 3 anonymous threats in the past month. The board had insisted on a personal detail. And the woman they were here to protect was famous for 2 things: building the company her father left behind into something he would not have recognized, and refusing for almost 4 years to let anyone stand close enough to see her tired. At 8:14 in the morning, the front door opened and the room went quiet for a different reason. Dominic Shaw walked in 4 minutes late. He was holding a phone against his ear with one hand and the small fingers of a 6-year-old girl with the other. His shirt was clean but unironed. His shoes had been polished recently by someone who knew what they were doing. Along the right side of his neck, half hidden by his collar, ran a thin, pale scar that started somewhere near his temple and disappeared under the cloth. The girl beside him was the smallest person in the building. She was holding a stuffed rabbit so worn at the seams that one of its ears flopped sideways with every step she took. "No," Dominic was saying into the phone, his voice low and even. "I can't come back. Just lock up. I'll figure something out." He ended the call without waiting for an answer. Then he knelt down on the polished floor right there in front of 63 men who were already watching him, and brought his face level with his daughter's. "I'm sorry, Luna," he said. "Mrs. Hayes was in a car accident this morning. The preschool closed because of the water main. I didn't have time to find anywhere else to take you." The little girl nodded very seriously, the way some children nod when they have been treated as someone whose understanding matters. "You're going to sit right here on this bench," he said. "You can draw. You can talk to Bo. I'll be back before the big clock moves to 9:30. Okay?" "Okay, Daddy." He kissed the top of her head, stood up, and finally noticed the room. The laughter did not come all at once. It started somewhere in the back, a low, private chuckle between 2 men who had not bothered to lower their voices. Then it spread the way laughter spreads when no one is willing to be the first one to stop. Heads turned, shoulders shook. One of the candidates near the front, a tall man with a jaw made for press photographs, leaned over to his neighbor and said loudly enough to be heard, "I guess Daddy Daycare is the new resume padding." Dominic did not react. He led Luna to a bench by the window, set her stuffed rabbit on her lap, and placed a small spiral notebook and 3 colored pencils next to her. Then he straightened, smoothed the front of his shirt with the flat of his hand, and walked toward the registration desk. What none of them noticed was the way his eyes moved as he crossed the room. He looked at the emergency exit first, then at the security camera above the reception desk, then at the placement of every man in the lobby relative to the bench where Luna was sitting. He counted, without seeming to count the distance from the front door to her, the number of seconds it would take him to cross it from any point in the room. It was a habit he had stopped trying to turn off years ago. The day he had stopped trying was also the day he had decided he would never lose someone he was supposed to protect ever again. There are 3 kinds of people who watch a stranger walk into a room. The first kind laughs the way most of those candidates were laughing because something about the stranger threatens a story they have spent their lives believing. If a man in a wrinkled shirt with a child at his side belongs in this lobby, then every shined shoe and tailored jacket means a little less than it did a moment ago. Laughter sometimes is just the heart refusing to learn a new lesson. The second kind stays quiet, but not out of kindness. They are waiting to see who wins so they know which side to be on later. Most of the men in that lobby were the second kind, even the ones who imagined they were the first. The third kind only watches. There was one of those 2 floors above behind a wall of one-way glass. Giselle Carter had been standing at that window for 19 minutes. She had a black coffee in one hand and a printed list of candidate profiles in the other, and she had not looked at the list once. She was 32 years old. She had inherited Nexara from a father whose ghost still occupied half the boardroom, and she had not slept more than 4 hours a night for almost 3 weeks. Beside her stood the head of corporate security Hunter Voss, a man in his mid-40s with the kind of clean, deliberate face that made people trust him too quickly. He had been with the company since long before Giselle had taken the chair. He had been one of her father's last hires. "He's late," Hunter said, "and he brought a child into a closed evaluation. We can disqualify him at the door. I'd actually recommend it." "Wait," Giselle said. "Ms. Carter, with respect, the optics alone." "I said wait." Down in the lobby, Dominic had reached the registration desk. He signed his name with a steady hand. He took the numbered badge they gave him, clipped it to his shirt, and turned back toward Luna for one more look. She was already drawing. He watched her for 2 full seconds before he stepped into the line of candidates being called toward the elevator. In the back of the group, a man with thinning gray hair was watching Dominic the way you watch a stranger you have not yet decided to recognize. His name was Marcus Rain. He had served 21 years in Federal Protective Service before going private. He had not told anyone in the building that Dominic's name had crossed his desk for a reason. He looked at the back of Dominic's head and something moved across his face that was not quite a smile. The man standing closest to Dominic in the line was the one who had made the daycare comment. He turned his head slightly and said, "You sure you don't want to take her home, friend? Long day ahead. Lot of physical work." Dominic did not look at him. He said in the same level voice he had used on the phone, "She'll be fine. I'm just saying, some of us trained for this." "I know." Something about the way he said it, not defensive, not proud, just the flat acknowledgement of a fact, made the other man stop talking. The first round was a written assessment, then a tactical scenario on paper, then situational interviews. Dominic moved through all of it without drawing attention, which in a room of men who had spent their careers learning to draw attention on command was its own kind of strange. The 4th round was the one everyone had been waiting for. They called it the live evaluation. The candidates were brought down to the basement training floor of Nexara, a converted gym with mats on the ground and cameras in every corner. Standing in the center of the mat was a man named Logan Cross, 6'2", 240 pounds. A retired heavyweight champion with 3 title defenses on his record, paid handsomely to be there, paid more if the candidates failed against him. Each man had 90 seconds. The instruction was simple: control the threat. Do not get hit. The first 11 candidates failed in different ways. 2 of them did better than expected. One of them landed an elbow before Logan put him on the mat. By the time they called Dominic's name, the room had developed a rhythm of polite professional embarrassment. Someone in the back of the observation gallery said loud enough to carry, "He's probably worried about scaring his daughter if he loses." A few people laughed. Dominic did not look up. He turned instead to the small monitor on the wall that showed a feed from the lobby camera. Luna was still on the bench, still drawing. He watched her for one breath. Then he stepped onto the mat. 2 minutes, he said quietly to no one. "I'll be right back." Logan Cross moved first. He always moved first. He came in with a right hand, the way he had come in with a right hand for 15 years, because it had worked for 15 years. What happened next took 7 seconds. Dominic did not step back. He stepped in. He moved into the punch instead of away from it, which is something fighters never do because in the ring it gets you killed. But this was not a ring, and Dominic had not been trained for a ring. He caught the inside of Logan's elbow against his shoulder, rotated his hip, hooked his foot behind Logan's knee, and put 240 pounds of former champion onto the mat in a single clean military takedown. The room did not cheer. The room did not breathe. It was the silence after more than the takedown itself that made Giselle Carter set down her coffee. Because Dominic did not walk away. He did not raise his arms. He did not look up at the gallery. He knelt down beside Logan, who was lying flat on his back, blinking at the ceiling, and put a hand on the man's shoulder. "How's your left rotator?" Dominic asked. "I felt something pop when you hit the mat." Logan stared at him. "Roll onto your right side, slowly. Tell me if it pinches." Logan rolled. He winced. Dominic checked the joint with 2 careful fingers, tested the wrist, said something quietly that no one else could hear, and helped him sit up. Then he stood, nodded once at the official with the stopwatch, and walked off the mat without looking at anyone. There are 2 kinds of victories in this world. The first kind needs to be seen. The man who wins it turns around, lifts his arms, and waits to be applauded because for him, the win does not really exist until somebody else confirms it. The second kind disappears the moment it happens because the man who wins it was never looking for an audience to begin with. He was only looking for the thing that needed to be done. A grown man is not the one who wins more often. He is the one who no longer needs anyone to know he won. He went straight back upstairs to the lobby. Luna was waiting. She held up her drawing. It showed a stick figure of a tall man and a smaller stick figure of a girl standing side by side under a big empty sky. There was no tree in it yet. He smiled at her, sat down on the bench beside her, and said, "That's a beautiful picture, sweetheart." It was at that moment on the 14th floor that Giselle Carter did something she had not done in 4 years of running Nexara. She walked out of the observation room. Hunter followed her into the elevator. "Ms. Carter, we have 8 more candidates to evaluate. The protocol, I know the protocol. Then you know we can't make a decision before..." The elevator doors opened. She crossed the lobby. 63 men plus the staff watched the CEO of Nexara walk past every other candidate and stop in front of the man who had brought his daughter to a closed evaluation. She did not look at the little girl. She looked at the father. "Mr. Shaw." He stood up. "I have one question," she said, "and I'd like an honest answer." "All right. Have you ever lost someone you were supposed to protect?" The lobby was quieter than it had been all morning. Dominic looked at her. He did not look away. When he spoke, his voice was the same level voice he had used on the phone and on the mat and to his daughter. "Yes," he said. "Once. I don't intend to have a second time." Giselle nodded once, slowly. "You're hired." Behind her, Hunter Voss made a small sound that was almost but not quite a protest. She did not turn around. "I'm not hiring the strongest man in the room," she said loud enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. "I'm hiring the one who won't forget why he's standing there." Then she turned and walked back to the elevator. Luna looked up at her father. She held out her drawing again as if checking whether something had changed about it. It had not. Not yet. This week, try something small that will turn out to be harder than it sounds. The next time you meet someone who makes you want to sigh and turn away, the delivery driver who fumbles his words, the relative you have already decided is not worth the conversation, the new coworker whose shirt does not fit right, give them 3 more minutes than you planned to. Ask them one real question, not a polite one, a curious one. Then listen for the second answer, not the first. You are not doing it to change your mind about them. You are doing it to give them a chance to prove you right. If they fail, you have lost nothing. If they don't, you have just kept a person. The rest of the world was about to walk past. And one day, that person may be the one who stands next to you when it matters. In a corner of the lobby, an older man named Marcus Rain watched Dominic gather his daughter's pencils and allowed himself finally the smallest private smile. He had been waiting almost 5 years for this morning, and it had just begun. The first 2 weeks were almost disappointingly quiet. Dominic showed up at 6:15 every morning, half an hour before Giselle Carter's car pulled out of her driveway in Greenwich. He rode in the front passenger seat, not the back. He never tried to make conversation. He read the morning briefing on a tablet with the screen tilted so the driver could not see it, and when they reached the underground garage at Nexara Tower, he was the first one out and the last one to sit down. He did not walk beside Giselle the way the previous men had. He walked 3 steps ahead of her in open spaces and 3 steps behind her in narrow ones. In elevators, he stood with his back to the doors. In meetings, he positioned himself near the only exit that was not the main one, the one nobody else ever used. He did this without explanation. He did it the way other people breathed. By the end of the first week, Giselle had noticed something else. He knew the names of the cleaning staff. He knew the name of the older man who ran the loading dock. He knew which of the parking attendants had a son who played baseball. None of these people had ever been introduced to him. He had simply learned the way some men learn by listening when no one expected him to. The strange part was that none of the other security people had ever bothered. There was a meeting on a Thursday afternoon, the kind that ran long because the men in it kept saying the same things in slightly different words. Giselle was sitting at the head of the table with her hand wrapped around a pen, tapping it against a folder that was already full of marks from the same pen. She was tired. She had been tired for so long that tired had stopped feeling like a state and started feeling like the weather. The pen slipped out of her fingers and rolled off the table. Before it hit the floor, a hand was already extending across her shoulder holding a different pen. Same model, same color, brand new, still smooth at the tip. She looked up. Dominic was already pulling his hand back. "Thanks," she said, surprised. He nodded once and returned to his place near the wall. The meeting continued. Nobody else seemed to have registered what had happened. That evening in the back of her car on the way home, she said almost to the window, "How long have you been carrying 2 of those?" "Since the second day," he said. "Why?" "You drop the same one every meeting that runs past 40 minutes. You hold it tighter the more tired you get. By minute 50, it slips." She turned to look at him. "And you carry a spare." "I carry 2 spares. One is for if the first one runs out of ink." She did not respond for a long moment. Then she said, "Most people would have told me to switch pens." "Most people aren't paid to make your day easier," he said. "They're paid to keep you alive. I figured I could try to do both." She did not answer. But that night when she got home, she put the spare pen on her nightstand and she did not throw it away. People love to tell each other to be humble. Almost no one tells you what humility actually costs. Dominic worked at a level no one in that building had seen in years, and for 2 full weeks, no one noticed. That is the real price of staying quiet. The louder men got promoted first. The louder men got remembered first. If you do not tell your own story, the world is happy to tell a worse one for you. But there is another way to look at the same man, and it might be the truer one. Dominic was not humble. He was simply focused. Humility is when you choose not to brag. Focus is when bragging never enters your mind because the work is taking up all the space. The world has a great surplus of people performing humility on camera. It has a serious shortage of people who are actually paying attention. Dominic's apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that had been a warehouse before someone had decided to put walls inside it. It had 2 bedrooms, both small, and a kitchen that opened onto a living room with 1 window. The window faced an alley. Luna had decorated her side of it with stickers of stars. Every night when he came home, he did the same thing. He hung his jacket on the hook by the door. He locked all 3 locks. And then, before Luna came running out of her room, he walked over to the small bookshelf by the couch, picked up a wooden picture frame that stood face down on the 2nd shelf, and turned it over for 1 second, then turned it back down. He never looked at the picture inside. He just touched the frame the way some people touch a wedding ring they no longer wear but cannot put away. Then Luna would come running, and he would catch her, and the apartment would fill up with the small, bright noise of a 6-year-old who had been waiting all day to tell him things. There was one night about 10 days into the new job when Giselle had to stay in the office past midnight. She was reviewing financials for the upcoming shareholder meeting, and she had asked the rest of her team to go home. Dominic had stayed because he was supposed to stay. He had also, after some hesitation, asked if it would be acceptable to bring Luna upstairs since the after-school program closed at 9 and he had no one else to call. Giselle had said yes without looking up from her screen. Luna had fallen asleep on the long leather couch in the corner of the office sometime around 11. She had her stuffed rabbit tucked under her chin. Dominic was at the small table near the door reading something on his tablet. A little after midnight, Luna stirred. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and looked across the office. Giselle was still at her desk, staring at her monitor. The light from the screen was making her face look hollow. There were 2 empty coffee cups beside her keyboard. Luna slid off the couch, picked up her rabbit, and walked over. "Luna," Dominic said quietly, "come back here, sweetheart." But Luna had already reached the desk. She held out the rabbit. "His name is Beau," she said. "You can hold him." Giselle looked down at the small girl in pajamas standing beside her chair holding out a stuffed animal that was clearly the most valuable thing in the building. "I'm okay, sweetheart," Giselle said gently, "but thank you. He's for when you feel like you have to be brave by yourself." Giselle looked at her without speaking. Luna went on in the matter-of-fact voice that small children use when they are repeating something they have memorized from someone they trust completely. "My daddy says you don't have to be strong alone. He says when Mrs. Hayes told him he was going to cry, he told me first so it didn't have to be a secret. He says secrets get heavy." Giselle's hand was very still on the desk. "Mrs. Hayes is the lady who watches me," Luna explained. "She had a car crash. She's okay now. But she said sometimes daddies cry too, and that's not a bad thing." Luna placed the rabbit on the desk, right next to the keyboard. "You can borrow him," she added, "just for tonight." She turned around and walked back to the couch, climbed up and was asleep again before her head had fully settled on the cushion. Giselle did not move for a long time. Then she reached out very slowly and rested 2 fingers on the worn ear of the stuffed rabbit. Across the room, Dominic was looking at his tablet. He had not looked up. He had not by any visible sign even been listening. But his jaw was tight in a way it had not been a minute earlier, and Giselle could feel it from across the room. That night, for the first time in almost 3 months, she did not take the small white pill that was sitting in the bottle in her desk drawer. She slept on the couch in her office with her shoes off and her blazer pulled over her shoulders, and somewhere in the middle of the night, her hand found the rabbit again and stayed there. The strange things began to happen the following Monday. The first one was small. A warning email flagged from the company's internal threat monitoring system was deleted from the server. Not quarantined. Deleted. The IT director told Hunter Voss it must have been a system error. Hunter agreed. He told Giselle the same thing. Dominic asked that evening who else had administrator-level access to that particular server. The answer was a list of 7 names. He memorized all of them. The second strange thing was Marcus Rain. 3 times that week, Dominic noticed the same older man near the building. Once outside the parking garage in the morning. Once across the street from the deli where Dominic bought his lunch. Once on a Friday, sitting on a bench in the small park where Dominic took Luna on Saturdays. The third time, Marcus stood up as Dominic walked past and said one sentence very quietly without looking at him. "You and I worked together once. I'd like 10 minutes of your time before you decide who to trust in that building." Then he walked away. Dominic did not follow him. Not yet. The third strange thing was Vivian Holt. Vivian was Giselle's senior assistant, a woman in her late 30s who had been with Nexara longer than Giselle had been the CEO. She was efficient, uncomplicated, almost invisible in the way that the most useful people in any company tend to be. But twice that week, she had disappeared from her desk for nearly 2 hours in the middle of the workday, and on both occasions when she came back her phone had been switched off and her hands had a faint tremor she tried to hide. The fourth strange thing was the worst. A subcontract worth $40 million signed on Giselle's behalf for a logistics partnership in the Midwest surfaced in the legal department's quarterly review. Giselle had no memory of signing it. The signature on the page was by every visible measure identical to her own. She called Dominic into her office and showed it to him. He looked at the signature for a long time. Then he said, Whoever did this had access to your physical signature in at least 3 other documents. They had time alone with them, and they had the patience to practice. That's a very short list. Yes. What do you want me to do? For now, he said, I want you to keep signing things the way you always do. Don't change anything. Don't tell anyone we noticed. The person who did this is watching to see if you flinch. We don't flinch. She looked at him across the desk. You sound like you've done this before. I've protected people who were being eaten from the inside before, he said. It looks the same in every building. The next morning when Vivian came in with the day's coffee, Dominic stopped her at the door of his small office on the executive floor and asked her very quietly to close it behind her. She did. Her hand on the door was steadier than it had been in days. You've been disappearing in the middle of the day, he said. She did not deny it. You're running your own paper trail on something. I don't know what yet, but I can tell the difference between a person who is hiding from this company and a person who is hiding from someone inside it. Vivian looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, I started keeping copies of every internal memo Hunter Voss has touched in the last 6 months. Off the network. On a personal drive. I started a week before you got here. Why? Because 3 times in the last year I have walked into Ms. Carter's office and found him at her desk when she was not in the building. The first 2 times he said he was leaving her a note. The 3rd time he closed her drawer when he saw me. Dominic looked at her. I never trusted myself enough to take it to anyone, she said. I'm not trained for this. I was waiting for someone who was. He nodded once. From now on, when something feels wrong, you tell me the same day. Not the next morning. The same day. And if a moment ever comes when I need you to make a phone call without a second's hesitation, I need you to make it, even if you're afraid. What kind of phone call? The kind that goes to the real security team on a number Hunter Voss does not have. I'll give it to you tonight. You will memorize it. You will not write it down. All right. She did not ask him why. She had been waiting in her own quiet way for someone to ask her to stop being alone with what she knew. He could see it in her shoulders the moment she walked back out into the hall. They were lower. They had been carrying something for a long time. The middle of that week was the day the message came. Dominic had to drive Giselle to an emergency meeting in White Plains an hour each way. Luna was at the daycare partner Nexara had vetted and approved, the same place Vivian's own children had gone for years. It was by every reasonable measure the safest possible place to leave her. They were 40 minutes into the drive home when Dominic's phone vibrated. The number was unknown. The message was a single line of text. Your daughter is drawing a tree. She wants to know if the tree needs a house. Below it was a photograph. Luna was sitting at a small table, head bent over a sheet of paper, a green pencil in her hand. The angle was from across the room, taken from somewhere near the doorway. On the page in front of her, almost hidden by her hand, there was a small green shape that had not been in any of her drawings before. A tree. Dominic looked at the message for exactly 3 seconds. He did not change his expression. He kept his hands on the wheel. He glanced once at Giselle in the rear seat, who was on a phone call about quarterly projections, and then he changed lanes. How much longer is your call? He asked when she ended it. That was the last one. Why? I'd like to leave the meeting at minute 11 instead of minute 40, he said. I have a personal situation. Is Luna all right? She will be. He drove the second half of the trip 8 miles per hour over the limit, which for him was reckless. He took Giselle into the meeting. He stood at the back of the room. At minute 11, he tilted his head once, just once, in her direction. She looked at him. She read his face. She closed the meeting in 3 sentences and walked out with him. Luna was fine. She was sitting at the little table in the activity room when he came in, drawing with the green pencil. The teacher looked up, surprised. There had been no incidents, no strangers, no phone calls. The photograph had been taken without anyone noticing, from a position that should have been impossible without staff access. That was the point of the message. The point was not the threat to Luna. The point was that whoever had sent it had access to Nexara's vetted vendor list, knew which daycare had been chosen, and knew that today was a day Luna would be there. which meant the person was not outside the building. The person was sitting at the table. When you are betrayed by a stranger, you lose a little of your faith in people. When you are betrayed by someone close, you lose a little of your faith in yourself because the question is not why they did it. The question is why you did not see. That is why so many people after one deep betrayal never truly trust anyone again. It is not other people they have stopped believing in. It is their own ability to read a face. That night in the apartment, Luna asked him why he was holding her so tightly when he picked her up. "Because I love you, sweetheart." "You always love me," she said. "But you don't always squeeze." She thought for a moment. Then she said, "I drew a tree today. Did Mrs. Mallory tell you?" "She did." "Why a tree?" "Because our house doesn't have a yard," Luna said. "So I drew a yard for us. The tree goes in the yard." He did not say anything. He held her for a long time, standing in the middle of the small living room with the picture frame on the bookshelf still face down behind him. He waited until Luna was asleep before he sent a single message from a phone number he had not used in almost 3 years. The message was 3 words. "Tomorrow, park, noon." The reply came in under a minute. "I'll be there." The next day, Marcus Rain sat on the same bench where he had spoken to Dominic before. Luna was on the swings 20 yards away, watched by a young off-duty officer Marcus had vouched for. It was the first time since taking the job that Dominic had let someone else hold a perimeter on his daughter, and he had only done it because he trusted the man on the bench more than he trusted most of the people in Nexara Tower. "You know who I am," Marcus said. "I know who you were. I know you got out after Sarah." The name went through Dominic like a wire pulled tight. "I helped move your file into Nexara's candidate pool," Marcus said. "I asked someone I trust to put your name on Hunter Voss's desk. I needed someone inside that I knew wouldn't be bought. And I needed a reason to put you in front of Giselle Carter specifically." "Why her?" Marcus looked at him. "Because the operation in Riga 5 years ago wasn't broken from the outside. It was broken from inside the company that ran the contract. That company was Nexara. Her father signed the order, but her father did not leak the intel. Someone working under him did." The wind moved through the trees over the bench. Luna laughed somewhere on the swings, a high, clean sound. "Her father is dead," Dominic said. "He is," Marcus said. "But the man who sold the file is not. He's still inside that building. He's been there for more than 20 years. He started under her father. He stayed on after her father died because the woman who inherited the company didn't know who he had been." "How sure are you?" "Sure enough that I needed you in there. Not sure enough that I could tell you before you said yes." Dominic was silent for a long time. Across the playground, Luna jumped off the swing in mid-air the way 6-year-olds do and landed laughing in the wood chips. "Tonight, before you sleep, take a piece of paper. Write down the names of 3 people in your life who are allowed to make you doubt yourself. 3 people whose opinion has the power to ruin your week, to keep you awake, to tell you what kind of person you are. Then beside each name, ask one question. What has this person actually done in the last 6 months to earn that much room in your life? You will be uncomfortable. With at least one of them, the answer will be nothing. You have been handing the keys of your inner house to someone who has never even taken off their shoes at the door. You do not have to cut them out. You only have to change the lock. Keep loving them. Keep showing up. Stop letting their opinion tell you who you are. Trust is not a birthday gift you give again every year. It is a paycheck. It has to be earned in real work." "I'll find him," Dominic said finally. "I know you will. And when I do..." Marcus looked at him for a long moment. "That," he said, "is the part I can't tell you. That's the part you're going to have to decide for yourself." The shareholder meeting was 4 days away. The shareholder meeting was set for 10 in the morning on the 4th Tuesday of the month. By 8:30, the boardroom on the 17th floor was already filling with men in dark suits who had flown in from 3 different time zones. The vote on the hostile takeover was the only item on the agenda. Everything else had been pushed. Dominic walked the perimeter of the floor twice before anyone else arrived. He checked the service elevator. He checked the stairwell on the north side, which was supposed to be locked from the outside and which he had personally tested at 5 in the morning for 3 days running. He checked the badge readers at every door on the floor. Then he went down to the lobby and stood for 90 seconds in front of the security console, where Hunter Voss spent most of his mornings looking at nothing in particular, the way a man looks at the back of a chair when he is thinking about who has been sitting in it. Luna was at the daycare. Dominic had walked her in himself that morning. He had spoken to the director. He had spoken to the 2 staff members on duty. He had given the director a phone number that was not his own and a code word that, if used, meant that she was to lock the building and call the second number in her phone before she called him. He had hugged Luna for slightly longer than usual at the door, and Luna, who noticed everything, had said, "You'll come get me." And he had said, "I always do." Then he had gone to work. The night before, he had done one more thing. He had gone to Vivian Holt's apartment, sat at her small kitchen table for 20 minutes, and walked her through a single procedure. He had given her a slim black phone not registered to Nexara with one number programmed into it. The number belonged to the head of the building's actual security force, a woman named Karen Bennett, who had been quietly furloughed onto an off-site assignment by Hunter that morning, and who, thanks to a separate phone call from Marcus Rain the previous evening, had not actually gone. She and 7 of her people were sitting in a hotel 4 blocks away, dressed for work, waiting to be told. If Vivian opened the line on the slim black phone, the line stayed open. Whatever it picked up, Karen Bennett would hear. "You will know when to open it," Dominic had told her. "How?" "You will know." By 9:45 the next morning, the boardroom was full. Giselle was at the head of the table in a charcoal suit that fit the way armor fits when it has been broken in. Vivian was at her right with a tablet and a stack of bound reports. The slim black phone was in the inside pocket of her blazer. Hunter was standing near the back wall, hands clasped, the picture of competence. 2 of his men stood at the door. 3 more were posted on the floor below. At 9:51, the lights flickered. Not all of them, just the ones along the east corridor, the ones closest to the service elevator. They flickered once and held. A second later, the badge reader on the main door of the boardroom let out a short electronic chirp and went dark. At 9:53, the building's power cycled. It was not a blackout. It was something more deliberate. The main lights stayed on. The emergency systems stayed on. But the badge readers, the cameras on the executive floors, and the elevator override panel all went into reset mode at exactly the same time. Anyone who had been counting would have noticed that the entire reset sequence was scheduled to last 4 minutes and 12 seconds. Dominic was already moving before the second flicker. He crossed the boardroom in 6 steps, leaned down to Giselle's ear, and said very quietly, "Stay in your chair. Don't look at the door. Don't look at Hunter. Listen for my voice." Then he straightened up. As he turned, he caught Vivian's eye for half a second and gave her the smallest possible nod. Her hand went into the inside pocket of her blazer. Inside, the slim black phone was already on. The line opened. The men at the door were turning. 4 of them came in through the main entrance dressed as building maintenance in coveralls and tool belts with badges that had been valid as of the previous evening. They moved like men who had done this before. 2 of them had handguns under their coveralls. One of them had a small device in his palm that was emitting a low blue light, which Dominic recognized as a signal jammer. Vivian saw them first. She stood up fast, and the man closest to her grabbed her by the upper arm and pushed her against the wall with a force that knocked the breath out of her. The slim black phone pressed flat between her chest and the wall by the man's own forearm kept transmitting. She did not scream. She was, Dominic noted with a part of his mind that was not currently busy, much braver under pressure than anyone in that building had ever given her credit for. The directors at the table froze. In the basement, 2 floors below, the third strange thing happened. Marcus Rain, who had spent the last 4 days quietly mapping the building's internal data architecture from a service closet on level B2, was found by a man he had not heard come up behind him. Marcus had been wearing a small earpiece all morning, and he had heard the man enter only at the very last instant when it was already too late to reach the weapon at his hip. The man fired 1 shot low and silenced into Marcus's left side. Marcus went down behind the server rack. The man did not check the body. He picked up the laptop Marcus had been working on and walked away. Marcus, who was not dead but who knew enough to play dead, lay still on the cold floor and pressed the heel of his hand against the wound and waited. Upstairs, the door of the boardroom was now blocked, and Hunter Voss stepped away from the back wall, walked to the head of the table, and stood beside Giselle's chair as if he belonged there. He pulled a handgun from inside his jacket casually, the way a man pulls out a pen, and rested it on the polished wood beside her water glass. "I told you not to hire him," Hunter said. He was not looking at Dominic. He was looking at Giselle. "I told you," he said again, "but you never listened, just like your father never listened." The men around the table did not move. Dominic was 12 feet from Hunter. He was 8 feet from the lead man at the door. He was, by his own quick calculation, exactly the wrong distance from both of them to do anything useful in a single move. That was when the slim black phone in his own jacket pocket vibrated. It was a separate phone from the one tied to Vivian's open line. He had been carrying two all morning. He looked at the screen with his hand still in his pocket. The number was the daycare director's. He pressed the answer key without lifting it out and angled his head a fraction of an inch toward his shoulder. The director's voice was very fast and very low. "A car just pulled up. 2 men. They're saying you sent them. They have a photograph of you with Luna." "Lock the building," he said, almost without moving his lips. "Lock it now. Don't open it for anyone. Not even me." "Mr. Shaw, they're walking up to the door." "Lock it." The line went dead at her end. He had 90 seconds, maybe less. If he left the boardroom now, 4 armed men would have full access to the CEO of Nexara and to a table full of directors who had no training and no exit. If he stayed, 2 men would walk into a daycare full of children and his daughter would be in a car within 4 minutes. He had been here before. Not in this room. Not in this building. But in the shape of this exact moment 5 years ago in a hotel corridor in Riga, when he had chosen the principal over the partner and walked away from the only person in the world he had ever promised to come home to. He had told himself every day for 5 years that he would never make that choice the same way again. He looked at Giselle. She was already looking at him. She had been the CEO of a company under siege for 4 years. She had read more faces under more pressure than any of the men in the room, and she read his now in the time it took her to draw one breath. He did not say anything. He did not need to. His eyes said, "I trust you to hold this room. I trust you because you are stronger than you have ever let yourself believe. I am going to my daughter. The team is already coming." She blinked once, slowly. Then she nodded almost imperceptibly, and her hand moved an inch closer to the water glass beside Hunter's gun. The moment when a man chooses one person he loves over another is the moment most people get wrong about him for the rest of his life. The world wants to call it the wrong choice or the right choice. It is neither. Dominic did not run to Luna because family always comes first. Family does not always come first, and the people who say it does are usually lying about what they actually did. Dominic ran to Luna because in that exact second, he knew that Giselle had a chance and Luna did not. He had judged probability. He had not judged worth. And in this life, sometimes the most honest moral choice you ever make is just an honest reading of the odds. Dominic moved. The lead man at the door was the closest threat. He crossed the 8 feet in 2 strides and used the man's own forward momentum against him, driving the heel of his hand up under the jaw and rotating the body sideways into the second man so that the second man's gun fired into the wall instead of into the table. The third man tried to bring his weapon up and discovered that the lead man, now unconscious, was a remarkably effective shield. The fourth man lunged for the corner of the table where Giselle was sitting. He never reached her. Dominic was by then already there. He took the fourth man down with a single elbow to the side of the neck and put a knee on his chest because the floor was the only place a man with a gun could not aim it. It had taken 11 seconds. Hunter Voss had not moved. Hunter Voss was standing at the head of the table, watching the entire thing with the expression of a man who had not until this moment fully understood the kind of person he had been working in the same building with. "Your daughter," Hunter said. "I know," Dominic said. He did not look at Hunter. He looked at Giselle. "Hold the room," he said. "Help is in the stairwell." And he was already running. He did not take the elevator. He took the north stairwell, the one that was supposed to be locked from the outside, and that he had personally been testing for 3 days. He went down the 17 floors at the kind of pace a man only finds when there is a child's name in his lungs. By the time he reached the loading dock, his shirt was wet down the back, and the sound in his chest was somewhere between a breath and a prayer. Behind him, the team in the hotel 4 blocks away had been moving for almost 2 full minutes. Karen Bennett had heard everything from the moment Vivian opened the line. The first of her people came through the 17th floor stairwell as Hunter was still standing at the head of the table. Giselle Carter did not try to fight. She did something more useful. She turned to Hunter and in the steady voice of a woman who had been negotiating multi-million-dollar deals since she was 26 said, "Whatever they're paying you, I'll triple it. I'll have it wired in 15 minutes. All you have to do is sit down." Hunter looked at her. He had expected fear. He had expected pleading. He had not expected to be offered a deal at the table where he had come to take one. It was a stall. She knew it was a stall. He probably knew it was a stall. But the words were enough to buy 30 more seconds, and 30 more seconds was all the building needed. The doors at the far end of the floor opened. Karen Bennett came in first with 6 of her people behind her. The last of the men at the door dropped his weapon before any of them said a word. Hunter Voss looked at Giselle. He set the gun down very gently on the table. "You're not your father," he said. "I know," she said. "That's the only reason I'm still here." The daycare was 4 blocks east of Nexara Tower. Dominic took a service vehicle from the loading dock and covered the 4 blocks in less than 3 minutes. The building was locked. The director had done exactly what he had asked. Through the front window, he could see 2 men standing on the front step, one of them on a phone, the other working on the lock with a small tool that was not quite small enough to be hidden. He did not approach from the front. He went around to the side door, the one only the staff used, and let himself in with the key the director had given him on his second day. He came through the kitchen, then the back hall, then the activity room where the children stayed when something was wrong. Luna was not in the activity room. His heart did not stop, but something in his chest forgot very briefly what it was supposed to be doing. Then he heard her voice low and matter-of-fact coming from the small art room off the side of the activity room. The door was closed. He could hear 2 adult voices on the other side of it, a man's voice trying to sound friendly and another voice that he recognized as the assistant teacher. "Honey," the man was saying through the door, "your daddy asked us to come pick you up. He's okay. He just had a meeting run long. You can bring your bunny with you." A small silence followed. Then Luna's voice, perfectly clear. "My daddy doesn't ask other people. My daddy always comes himself." The man tried again. He tried a different name. He tried a different reason. Luna did not answer him a second time. Dominic could hear through the thin wall the soft scrape of a chair being moved, and he understood with a kind of pride that almost broke him that his 6-year-old daughter had pushed a chair under the door handle from the inside. He came down the hallway behind the 2 men. He did not say anything. He did not give a warning. The first man was unconscious before he had finished turning around. The second man tried to draw a weapon and found that his wrist was no longer where his hand expected it to be. Both of them were on the floor of the activity room within 5 seconds of Dominic entering it. The director was already on the phone with the police. Dominic walked to the art room door. He did not push it open. He knocked very softly 3 times and then twice. Inside, very quietly, he heard the chair move. The door opened a crack. A small face looked up at him. "Daddy?" "Hi, sweetheart." She did not run to him. She walked. Her stuffed rabbit was still in her hand. Her drawing was still on the table behind her. He picked her up and she put her arms around his neck, and she did not cry, which somehow was worse than if she had. "I knew it wasn't you," she said into his collar. "I know you did. You were very smart, baby." He carried her out of the art room without looking back at the 2 men on the floor. 3 days later, in a quiet interview room on a floor of the federal building where the windows did not open, Hunter Voss sat across from a man with a recorder and a folder and gave a statement that lasted 4 hours. The story he told was older than anyone in the room had expected. He had started at Nexara more than 20 years earlier under Giselle's father on the planning side of contract security work. For a long time, he had been competent and well-paid and unremarkable. Then 5 years ago, the company had run a protection operation in Riga that needed a specific piece of inside information to succeed. It had received that information from a source no one had ever publicly identified. The source had been Hunter. The money had been substantial. The operation had succeeded by the company's standards. A 2-person partner team had not come home. When Giselle's father died a year later, Hunter had stayed at Nexara, partly because the salary was good, partly because the woman who had inherited the company had no idea what he had once done, and he wanted very much to keep it that way. The hostile takeover had simply offered him a chance to finish the part of his career that had paid the best. Marcus Rain had spent the last 5 years trying to find him. Marcus was by then sitting up in a hospital bed 2 floors above the interview room, eating a meal he had not particularly wanted. He had lost a kidney. He was going to be fine. Dominic walked into the interview room without an appointment. The man with the recorder looked up. Hunter looked up. Dominic did not sit down. There are 2 ways to end a story of revenge. The first is to destroy the person who hurt you. It is satisfying for an evening and hollow for a decade. The second is to know their name. Look them in the face once and walk out the door. That one does not satisfy anything, but it leaves you standing afterwards as the person you actually want to be. People love to say that forgiveness is for you, not for them. That is half right at best. The thing that is really for you is not forgiveness. It is refusing to let the person who hurt you keep deciding who you become. That is harder than forgiveness. Most people never manage it. Dominic looked at Hunter for a long time. Then he said in a voice that was steady, because he had practiced being steady about this for 5 years, "I waited a long time to know your name. Now I know it. That's enough." Hunter started to speak. Dominic did not let him. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm not going to ask you why. I came here because I needed to look at you once with both of us understanding what you took from me so that I never have to think about your face again. You don't get to be the last thing I think about at night. Not anymore." Then he turned and walked out. 3 months later, on a Saturday afternoon in early spring, Giselle Carter stood at the back door of a small house with a yard holding 2 coffees and watching a 6-year-old in the grass. Luna was drawing on a large sheet of paper spread out on a flat stone. The drawing showed 3 figures, a man and a woman and a small girl standing under a wide, full-leafed tree. Under the tree was a little house. On the lowest branch of the tree was a brown smudge with 2 long ears. "Bo lives in the tree now," Luna said without looking up. "Mrs. Hayes said trees need houses too, so I gave the tree a house." Dominic came out onto the back step beside Giselle. He took one of the coffees. He did not speak. He smiled. It was not a polite smile or a tired smile or the small private smile he used to give when something hurt, and he did not want to show it. It was the smile of a man who had finally been given permission to put down something he had been carrying for a very long time. That night, after Luna had fallen asleep on the couch with Bo tucked under her arm, Dominic walked to the bookshelf in his apartment and picked up the small wooden picture frame that had stood face down on the second shelf for almost 5 years. He turned it over. He set it upright against the wall where the light from the lamp could reach it. The woman in the picture was smiling. She had been smiling for 5 years in the dark where no one could see her. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he said very quietly, "She drew us a tree with a house under it. I will not tell you to love the people who matter to you. You have heard that 1,000 times, and it has not changed anything. So instead, 3 things that this story actually taught and that you can do this week. 1. Somewhere in your life there is a person quietly carrying something for you. A parent who is getting older. A friend who always picks up. A coworker who keeps taking the harder shift. They will never tell you. Call them this week, not to thank them. Ask them, "How are you really?" Wait for the second answer, not the first. 2. There is a person you have already decided not to like. You know who. You do not need to apologize. Apologies sometimes make it worse, but stop telling yourself the old story about them inside your own head. Every time you do, you are locking them in a version they may not still be. Hand them a blank page in your mind. They will never know you did. You will be the one who changes most. 3. Somewhere in your home there is a photograph, a letter, an object you have turned face down because looking at it hurts. You do not have to lift it today. But know this: face down is not healing. It is only pause. One day when you are strong enough, lift it up, not to relive the pain, to say to yourself, I survived it, and I am still here. The worth of a person is not measured by the wounds they avoided. It is measured by what they were still willing to plant after all of it. A tree, a house under the tree, a small brown rabbit on the lowest branch. He did not turn the picture back down. He did not need to.